Hello and welcome to Tune In with Luke and Amy, the podcast where we discuss your favourite topics, but with our favourite creatives.
Asking them the questions you didn't even know you needed answering. So this is now episode 7, and today we're here with Duncan Lee. Introduce yourself.
Hello. Hi guys. Nice to
How are
see
you?
Kind of. How am there? How am I or how old am I? I don't know what you said.
I mean both if you want to answer them both.
No,
but how are
I'm
you?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you. I'm a whole 32 years old now. So old.
Wow.
A whole.
Made it here 3.2 decades.
Yeah.
But so you are the founder, owner, I don't know what you want to call it, of XYZ Music Academy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it joint founder with your brother Mike?
Yes. Yeah, me and Mike put our joined forces and started everything about, I would say mid 2014 now, I would say. So
Yeah,
Oh, really?
It's like
nearly 7 years. I mean, it was kind of transitional from my previous company, Dunk's Drum School.
Yeah,
as a sole trader.
Dunk's Drums is going to say.
Yeah. So it didn't
Indeed,
really, I
yes.
would say by the time it sort of started to get traction, it was about 2016 though. So we've been, a good 4 to 5 strong years now.
Nice.
I didn't realise it was actually going on that long, actually. But yeah, so for people listening, I am a guitar teacher at XYZ Music Academy.
A very good guitar teacher and also a very epic drummer as well. So.
Don't flatter him too much.
Yeah,
You're blushing.
but yes, obviously, Duncan here is a masterful rhythmical genius and multi-instrumentalist,
Yeah.
businessman,
The list goes on
incredible
and on.
Barbecue maker.
Father,
Yeah.
Not barbecue,
No.
not a maker. I guess you don't make barbecues, but
barbecue chef, cheffer,
Yeah.
chef.
Well, they're
I
not the
don't
same
know.
anymore. Being vegan now, it's just like.
Are you
No.
vegan now?
Yeah. So I've been.
I can't imagine
for a
it.
year now. Yeah. So, yeah.
To
But
be fair, there's many like alternatives though that you can use. Will you still cook like other people meat?
oh yeah. It's kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not imposing that.
Yeah,
on
you're not like
people.
strict.
I just
You're-
found for myself, for my
Yeah.
kind of mental state and all that sort of stuff, I just being quite congested. It's like I'm quite prone to injury, unfortunately, but like
Yeah.
I'm quite sensitive to things like uric acid, and that's in a lot of red meat and a lot of beer and stuff like that. So it's just like back off from that stuff and drink spirits instead.
Yeah,
Or
that's
not
what
drink
I
at
have
all.
to do. I've got a stomach disease, so I tend to just stick to spirits. It's better. I feel like people are like, oh, it's a bit crazy, but I think because it's got like nothing else added to it.
Yeah.
Nothing fizzy.
Yeah,
Also,
that's the
also
thing. It's
quite
like
good on the
fizzy
calorie
drinks and
front as
stuff.
well, but
Yeah.
because hard spirits are so healthful as well, But
Yeah. But we want to kind of go back into your roots. So kind of want to take you back probably to kind of like, I don't know, just before going to uni, like kind of college.
Yeah.
Did you know that you wanted to, so what did you study? Like what was
at A level or
university.
University then?
So, going before that, interestingly enough, it was back at Misbourne School, and it was weird because there was like so little interest in music as a subject at sixth form. They wouldn't timetable it as a subject. So the head of music was like, look, I'll just run extra clubs for you after school, and we'll extra hours, for you after school, and we'll do it that way, which was kind of really tough to fit it in. But then the school were like, well, because you have to fill your timetable, you need to do music on top of the initial 4. So I ended up doing 5 AS levels.
Oh god.
So super stretched,
horrible.
and then dropped to 4, and then it was a slog. And actually, my worst result was music. So I did much better in the music tech, business, and IT side of things. But even then, not great. I was a distracted teenager who didn't really know what I wanted to do. So up until that point as well, up until sixth form, I was completely self-taught on the drums from the age of 12, I think it was. Just so self-taught, not really had any lessons, just sort of like floating around. Started to get guidance in sixth form as well, and then so going into the uni side of things, I actually, after sixth form, I went straight over to drum tech. So I did a 1-year diploma there, which was brilliant. And I think they, since being at tech music schools, I think they were bought up by BIM. So, and I think they offer a similar course over there now as well, which was, from my perspective, at that point in my life, like things personally for me weren't the easiest. So I was able to immerse myself in that course that year, and it was brilliant for me. That's where I kind of really began to get some sort of overview on drumming as a discipline. Because I went to tech music schools to study drumming. It was a 1-year drumming diploma course, and it was something like 20 to 25 hours of lectures a week, along with I was doing another 20 hours of practice on top. So a year solid of that, and it just really accelerated everything for me. And then I had a year out to get a few jobs, and then I ended up going on to uni after that and studying music at Oxford Brookes. So
okay, what specifically did you do, like study music? Was it music business, music? I don't know.
It was just it was just music as a topic. It was a bachelor of arts degree, and it was kind of quite varied. You kind of picked your modules, which was cool.
Yeah.
It was a nice thing. I think probably towards the end of that degree, that course itself, or the facilities at the uni were fairly run down by that point. Since then, I think they've probably finished it by now. They finished just having a new state-of-the-art music facility built at Brookes, which is good because it needed it.
Yeah.
But it was quite varied. You could kind of shape it how you like. So while I was on that course, I did professional practice. I did a compositional portfolio instead of a dissertation. So there was flexibility to kind of do and shape the degree how you wanted to and how you wanted to get the most out of it. And yeah, that was cool. I suppose while I was there, though, I mean, I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but a full-time degree a full-time degree kind of doesn't really occupy you in a full-time sense, I found. So I was doing a lot of things around my degree to keep me occupied, whether it was playing in bands. So I did a tour while I was on my degree, I think. Yeah, I did. And then I was working for Yamaha at the time as well. And then was also in my third year building the early stages of what Dunk's Drum School was, which was my sole trader business before going on to XYZ.
So you're quite a busy man in uni then.
Yeah.
Yeah. To my detriment, I think. In a way, I don't know if you guys, Luke, I don't know if you check out my mental health videos as part of the newsletter. For XYZ.
Yeah, we were going to ask you about your time with uni and like building Dunk's Drum School, because I know you had some time in hospital. Is that right?
Yeah. So the third year was all about. I had the opportunity to take on a lease at Westcote Venture Park and move all my students over to that location, and it was just a chance for me to kind of let my kind of profession run wild. I had the chance to build recording facilities, rehearsal facilities, and there was a large teaching space there too. So in my third year, I had some savings that I put to one side from teaching, and I used that to kind of kit the place out with no prerequisite knowledge of any sort of woodwork whatsoever. So it was kind of probably a dangerous thing to do. But
I remember the foam drum kits you made, the wooden frames with the foam pads on.
That's right. So basically, that idea, cut a long story short, for that was borrowed from the Yamaha discipline that I used to teach at, where it was cool. I liked that way of teaching things, but it was very hard to give students, I suppose not value, but like a real chance to soak up the coordinational content that was in each lesson, because you would run groups of up to 8 students but only have 2 drum kits to rotate them on, and so you've covered a couple of exercises and before you know it's the end of the lesson. And the courses were really well structured and everything. It was a good thing, but it was difficult to help students progress faster. So what I did was, while I was kitting out the studios, I designed and built 7 practice pad kits just out of a timber frame. Had snare pad, which was on a snare stand, but then you had 3 mounted toms around, and then 3 white pads, which I kind of cut up. I actually bought a large horse mat and cut that into shape and stuck that onto these things. I mean, it sounds awful, but actually I think it might be still I think there's a Dunk's Drum School Facebook page out there somewhere, but you'll see it's like on a fisheye lens and you can see the pad kits and they look pretty cool.
Can just imagine.
Basically, I just wanted to give students a representation of a drum kit if they're not on a drum kit, especially if I was teaching groups, which I was still teaching groups then when I started. So they would be on a fully fledged practice pad kit, so they've got the coordination or representation of a drum kit there. Because sometimes
the formation.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're teaching a drum fill, for example, and you only have one pad, it's very hard to kind of imagine voicing it and moving around in a certain way. Whereas this helped that, and then on top of that, then I made sure I had at least 4 drum kits in the room to rotate the kids around. So then it was just maximising contact with the kit, really. But yeah, so third year, I got into the habit of, I mean, at the time I had a girlfriend at the time, and so I was trying to sort of keep that going as well as my degree, as well as the teaching I already had going on. So I'd kind of start my day, go off to lectures at uni, finish that, come back home where I was based my teaching at the time, and teach up until like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and then I'd drive over to Westcott and put a good 4 or 5 hours in of building work.
God.
And that was kind of my routine for 5 or 6 days a week for must have been 3 or 4 months. But then,
I mean, how did you manage that mentally? Because that, like, some people strive off being super busy, but I mean, that would probably...
That's like too busy.
I feel like,
I never felt, I don't know, I was too excited to feel tired at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I suppose when you're that age as well, so I was 21, 22 at the time, you just don't really consider the consequences because you just think, yeah, I can do all this. And I've watched it with, like, you know, my employees now at XYZ. Some of them just keep saying yes to things. I'm like, are you sure? Because and then actually it gets to a point where I'm like, no, because I know better than you because I'm old. But like, no, but also because people want to keep mounting up what they can do, not knowing their limit. And I suppose doing that for me is what allowed me to reach my physical like limit of going, okay, actually no, if I go beyond this, I will destroy myself. And actually the telling sign for me was I actually started getting really severe sciatica in my right leg. So it would be a case of I would stand up and walk a few steps, and then my right leg would just shut down. So I'd basically collapse because my L4, L5 disc had came out of alignment and was pressing on my sciatic nerve, which was pretty grim. And it wasn't easy to teach. That began to be a real slog to do that because it was just, you know, being in constant pain. It's hard to be present.
It affects your whole body because it is the central point of your body. It's not just like your ankle. It affects your legs, your arms.
Drumming really took a hit for me. It wasn't just...
Was it your right leg, did you say?
My right leg, so my bass drum leg.
So your predominant kick... Oh,
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I could play, like, simple patterns and stuff, but, like, doing fast double kick pedal stuff was out the window for a long time. And even now, I mean... I've never been that, I would say, confident with fast single strokes on my feet. That's why I kind of, as a drummer, I don't know those people who might have listened to my stuff before with bands, tend to do more stuff like Herta-based patterns. I tend to play more double strokes on the feet instead of single strokes because for me, that enables me to maintain balance. And posture for me as well. When on the kit, I drill all my students on it as well massively, especially because it seems, I don't know whether it's just younger generations, but everyone's monstrously tall. Like I'm 6'1", but I'm getting like, Luke. You know, it's just so. I mean, maybe it's just, for me and Mike. It's just very weird watching a generation of students grow up and just grow taller than us. It's really weird. Like Luke, I remember going back 10 years when you used to be like this timid little kid waiting in your dad's car for your lesson. I'd be like, "You're right," and you're like, too scared to wave back at me. You know, and so it's just very strange. But so I massively for taller players, in particular, I get that. I really make sure their posture is where it needs to be, making sure they're looking with their eyes, not their neck. You know, because especially because everyone's in the habit of looking at their phones all the time. You find that everyone's just got used to this sort of like hinged neck sort of look, and it's just going to really affect everyone. But going back to the back issues. So I started having the sciatic pain, which then in turn resulted. I mean, around that sort of time, it resulted in me. I was getting advice from my physio, and he was sort of saying, right, well, we need to kind of reduce the pressure off of the discs, and your posture and everything's an issue. So prior to my surgery, I ended up sleeping on the floor for like 9 months. So which was fine. You know what? I actually quite like a firm surface to sleep on. It's actually much better for you in a lot of respects. But with my legs on a table, that was the hard bit because your circulation. You know, I'd wake up in the night with numb legs, and I'm just like, I can't do this. But you sort of have to sort of do what you can to take the pressure off the discs. And eventually I decided to have the surgery just because it wasn't getting any better, and I needed to just get moving with things, because it was towards the end of my degree. And I managed to arrange with my lecturers to get all my final performances done before surgery, and then afterwards it was kind of like it timed perfectly in a way, because I needed to prepare more content for my drum school at the time. So I needed to write the second book, because I had students getting past the first book that I'd written for them. So I needed more content, and I knew this surgery was coming. So beforehand, at the time, what I did for my drum books when I wrote them is I did loads of backing tracks as well. So play guitar and stuff, and just made sure they had something to play their drums too. So prior to the surgery, I made sure I recorded all of the tracks I needed. I finished my compositional portfolio. I recorded all the audio I needed, and also in preparation, which I'll come back to in a minute. This was on the episode that I put on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. But I built a lying down / standing up desk. So it's just this frame that I could either pop on top of a desk, and I could stand up, and it was at an angle because of how I was using it to write my book as well. And then if I laid down, then I could have the laptop on there and not have to sit down.
That's quite cool.
Because after my surgery, I wasn't allowed to sit down for 6 weeks. So I had to either stand up or lie down. So
what?
That must be so awkward.
That's so weird.
Because of the movement in the disc. I think they were trying to reduce the risk of that. I don't know. Blah,
That is
blah.
weird.
But so I had that. I made sure all of that was ready. So as soon as I went under the knife, then I could wake up and instantly just get my desk on, start mixing the audio that I needed for my book, but also my compositional portfolio to submit to uni. And then when I was stood up at the standing up desk, annoyingly at the time, I don't know why I did it, but for the book, I hand wrote all the notation. So if you look in the old Dunks Drum School books, Luke, which are in the library, you'll see that that's all my scribing, and it would be like, writing whole scores, making sure it was as neat as possible. Like the amount of times I made mistakes and would have to just bin the whole page. It took me like half an hour to write. I don't know why I just didn't upload Sibelius and just do it that way. I think I was scared of the software at the time, so frustrating. But I think that's what it was. I had a version that only allowed me to do a certain type of cross stick, and it wasn't the one that I wanted in the book, so I just boycotted it and hand wrote it instead. And so I did that, wrote that book, mixed the thing, got everything submitted, and actually I got through the entire box set of Friends as well while I was doing that as well. I was just on in the background while I was writing my book. It was actually
it's a long box set, so you must be going for a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was 10 years ago before Netflix or anything like that. So, but yeah, no, it was. I actually really enjoyed that experience, and I sort of just shifted my focus, and and that kind of, it allowed me to obsess over other things, because I wasn't so physically distracted. I could use my mind and just stop for a bit. So, it was kind of my way of coping with it, I suppose.
Yeah, your way of kind of getting through. I guess it kind of, it's a good way to distract you from, because I know what it's like to be kind of bedbound after an operation. It's hard to make a comeback because you don't want to kind of overdo yourself to the point again where you you then have to take many steps backwards. It's kind of like, it's more mentally like a mental kind of block than actually a physical block. Like your body could be ready to take on more, but sometimes you're like, I don't want to do that in case it ruins me from playing again.
Unfortunately, I think I was probably the other way. I think after 6 weeks, I started doing weightlifting again, which was probably
the worst thing.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, I should have been working on different muscle groups to the one I was working on. Like I should have been, now I know better. And actually I do my leg, my back, touch wood, is great. And actually having read a lot into it, it's like the things I was scared of as someone with back pain was the things that are actually going to kind of help me. So, compound lifts, like I do a lot of deadlifting, which is great. And I there's things I have to consider. So and this is for anyone who's a musician or anyone who's tall as well, you really need to get to know your biomechanics and make sure that, for myself, I'm flat-footed and a bit knock-kneed. And as a result of being flat-footed, my pelvis tilts in a way that has probably fed into this back issue anyway. So it wasn't necessarily, I'm a believer that my lifestyle didn't help. It probably brought on the sciatica, but I probably would have got that anyway, just through poor biomechanics, poor footwear, all that sort of stuff. It's really boring stuff to talk about, but actually
it's important
for longevity. Yeah, absolutely. For longevity of a life in music, especially if you're going to go on tour and do things that are quite physically challenging for you. You know, I've had many friends in bands that I love and watch them get injured, and they've had to stop for a couple of years and, you know, do something else, and it's just like not being able to do the thing you're calling in a way must be the hardest thing. And for me, that was a very real thing for me. Like, you know, the idea of that I signed a waiver for the operation. Like, if they nicked the sciatic nerve, then I could lose use of that leg or all these other things. And it's like you have to sort of just like, for me, I just ignored that. I was like, it won't happen. It was fine. And luckily it didn't. But it's trying to shift your focus and making sure that if something like that did happen, then be prepared for it. But at the same time, before that you get to any of that, do what you can to prevent it. So, you know, just make smart choices, I would say, habitually as well, not away from music. Like I mentioned earlier about the whole use of phones and stuff like that. I mean, a phone originally was to call people. You hold it here, not here.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we're getting people that don't recruit proper posture. Like I've witnessed it more online than ever, especially the last lockdown, teaching online, watching the posture of everyone online, and some people who are like, oh, let me just search it on my phone, and then watch them literally turn into this sort of like
just collapse.
Yeah, it's just I can't even do that with my neck. You know, I'm like, how have you learned to just hunch that much? And it's all these and it's always the tallest students I find. So anyway, I'm getting off topic, but it's just a thing that I would, having gone through it myself, I look back and I just feel it's so important for these students to know about and just kind of be aware of.
I see it as well in my lessons online. Sometimes they just like, they answer the Zoom call and their phone is literally on the floor and they're sitting on the chat and they're like this.
Well, yeah.
And I'm like, guy, come on now. Set your phone up on the table at least.
Mate, and that's the thing as well, like stuff like that, especially for, I'm kind of lucky in a way that I play an instrument where you can choose to be symmetrical if you want to. Same with the piano. But if you play a guitar where your posture forces you to have
you're
one
skewed
arm
to
raised,
one side.
Yeah, absolutely. And it forces even silly things like on a drum kit, for me, I try and avoid having the music stand too far over to the left. I try and keep it within my... Because you don't want to have your neck turned. And it's watching things like that. I've watched students just naturally develop like a natural hunch with one shoulder because of how they position their hand on the hi-hat. And I'm like, no. Like, get rid of that. And making sure they're as neutral as possible. And especially, like, when the students get taller and they're old enough to know better, I teach them how to set the kit up and make sure they're preserving themselves as much as possible.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, obviously I ride horses, so your posture is everything. You know, if you're like slightly, you know, uneven, the horse will be slightly uneven. It will pick up on everything. So if you're unbalanced and you've got knots in your back somewhere, you have to go to a physio, get them fixed before you ride your horse again, because otherwise it ruins the horse.
Isn't your head the heaviest part of your body in a way? Like if you fall, obviously you normally go head first. So if you're tilting to one side, I suppose for the horse, it's like, I mean,
you're putting their weight on.
Yeah, you guys don't know yet because you don't have kids, but like when I have my son Daniel on my shoulders and he starts like pulling his head to one side, I'm trying not to fall over with him on top of me. And he's not even that heavy, but it's just he's pulling my center of gravity. So
just holding your head.
Sort of like driving me and steering me, you know. So
yeah. But that's the thing you see as well. It's like when you do have children, quite a few people like balance the child on the hips, which is the worst thing you can do. Like you see that at my boss, obviously I work in a gym, he's always telling mums like, don't balance your child on your hip too much because then it will like make your spine go funny and totally. Everything. It's just not what you want. You want to try and center, because they are heavy, like even though they're not actually that heavy, it's still quite a lot of weight to have on just a balance on one bit of your body. Totally.
That's it.
It's not good.
Yeah, and I think the reason why this is so important to me is because, you know, there's enough challenges in life with being a musician, and being injured and away from your profession is just a very hard thing to deal with. So, but you're absolutely right on the horse riding front and on the postural front with children as well. Yeah, I do find actually, you know, even with my daughter, like she's 2 now, but I'm getting out of the habit of holding her all the time, because for that brought all sorts of shoulder injuries for me. And I'm trying to track it down. I'm like, what am I doing wrong on the drums? And I'm like, hold on a minute. No, I carried Jessica for like an hour straight the other day. That's why.
Yeah.
And you just
Carrying her around.
once again, like I said, habitual things. You just don't realize these things are damaging you.
That's the thing. It's subconscious. Like you don't even know. Like you, like walking around on your phone, you don't know. You just, or when you're like typing on your laptop, if you lean a certain way. Yeah. It's all these things, they add up as well. They may be small, but if you do this every single day, it's going to add up and it's going to affect your body.
And the lifestyle that we're all kind of moving toward, especially with lockdown and stuff, we're all in front of screens. So, you know, the rate of this damage happening is accelerating. And like, you know, I love the film WALL-E, the Pixar film. Like that could tell the future. You know, like everyone's getting fat. Everyone's not talking to each other. They'd rather talk to each other through a screen, even though they're next to that person. Like they'd rather speak. You know, it's just we're heading that way, and I'm just sort of like trying to break out of it, and you know, make sure we still use our bodies because they have functions.
Exactly. You know? Move your body, make the most of it whilst you can. Drill into people on the daily.
Anyway, let's get back on music.
Let's go. That was great. Yeah, major tangent. A question that I had was, what inspired you to kind of like teach children in particular? Do you reckon it rooted from not having, you know, like you said, you didn't have music as like an A-level option? Does it kind of root from there that you want to give that opportunity to other, you know, children in schools and stuff? Because when I was in school, we didn't like, I think as a young kid, we played like the glockenspiel once a week. And that was it. There was never really like an option, or the recorder in the classroom. There was never like the option to take that. Unless your parents are musical, then they would pay like private lessons, but it just wasn't there. Like it wasn't like a, hey, have a go at music.
Exactly. Yeah, no, totally. I think, well, as a teenager, I actually started teaching when I was about 16. And it wasn't like with students and such, it was just teaching my mates. Like, because they wanted to pick up little bits of drums here and there. And then I suppose when I started, I had a few private students already, but when I kind of started teaching Yamaha and stuff, I was trained on their syllabus, even though I had some of my own resources going at the same time. And that sort of introduced me to a heap of students at the time. And I think for me, it's like correcting what I missed out on in my past. So, you know, where I started music at 12, and kind of went through my education fairly self-taught and kind of blissfully unaware of how much information I was missing at the time. But you know, there's two mindsets in that. You know, sometimes you can go through education too heavily and miss out the more natural discoveries you might make as a self-taught musician. And when I was at uni, actually, there was loads of discussions on this. You know, to be educated or not, and there was lots of bands. I think it was I can't remember off the top of my head which band it was now, but a very famous band where all the musicians were just completely self-taught, and they discovered these songs, world famous for it and everything. I think there's value in both ways, but I want to give students the opportunity to have that choice rather than being forced down a path. So you say about the glockenspiel or xylophone primary school. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But I think, like I said, correcting what I missed out on. But now I get to see my students come through and have some amazing opportunities. Like one is he's gone off to Purcell School of Music on a scholarship, and doing very well there. And he's just come off of a contract with he was the drummer for School of Rock in the West End. So that was quite a big deal, and he's an insane player. I've got some other students. One in particular, he's reached what they call brilliance in percussion, where he should reach that by the summer, where he gets grade 8 in snare drum, drum kit, xylophone, and music theory. So then he's going to join.
Sounds expensive.
Well, I mean, he in terms of discipline, it was like he'd come to an exam sitting day and he'd sit 5 exams in a row. So he'd basically just sit in with the examiner and mostly come out with distinctions as well, like straight distinctions on everything. And
that's
it's just
insane.
Because he knew he had a goal, and I think that was it. Like he was excited by the outcome, and I think that's a theme that I could talk to you about. Many things is, you know, once you find your excitement in something, that's where you get your energy from. It's not necessarily how you feel on the day. It's like, I want to do this. So you know, as a result, he's going to go and join the army as a full-time musician. So like, for example, at Buckingham Palace, where they have the changing of the guard, and there's a bunch of musicians that play, he'll be one of those musicians and go on tour around the world and stuff. He's got a great life ahead of him in music, providing he gets through the final part of the interview. So yeah, very excited for him. There's some other students as well, just watching them, and I'm like, wow, you're head and shoulders above where I was at that age, and it's exciting for me because it's like, it's like I don't know, it's almost like going through a time machine and sort of fixing things, changing the past.
No, it's rewarding. It's like rewarding. You feel like kind of you're giving them the dreams that you never got to have as a child.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't sort of like hard done by it. I had a wonderful childhood, and I had wonderful opportunities come to me, and I'm very happy with where I am. But it's just like it's just nice to give these students.
You're opening the extra door for them, basically. There's that extra door that you're unlocking for them, which I think is really good. Yeah,
and I had a student. She went to BIM 2 years early. She went at the age of 16, so she got all these things I can add up. Two of my students work at XYZ, Max and Richard. They came through the ranks. And same with you, Luke. You're one of Mike's students. So this gives me and Mike immense proud. That's not even a sentence that could be strung together.
Immense proud.
Immense pride. Sorry, it gives me immense pride. Like me and Mike, immense pride watching you guys just absolutely smash it. And it's just like, it's weird. It's very strange for us watching you guys have your own generation of students you're pulling through as well.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's really cool.
It's that. I mean, we were talking about a similar thing to. We did a podcast before this in morning with LJ, and we're just saying about how rewarding it is when you have a student that is inspired and they have that goal, and teaching them as a dream, and that they love to practice, and it's just that feeling of, oh yes, this student is getting it. They've got it, and I think it's almost like inspiration, kind of. Trumps.
Have you had education? Well, that's it. I think it's paired though. I think it's important for students to be informed and know their stuff. But then if they're on fire with inspiration as well, then they're unstoppable. So have you had it any yet when any students come in and they sort of scare you with their playing? Has that happened for you?
Yes, I absolutely love it. Like especially my student Adrian, because I only have him every 2 weeks, but it's like he's like jumping like months progress every time I see him.
Yeah.
So he'd be like, oh yeah, have you written any songs, man? Because I usually ask him that most weeks, and then there was just this one week he was like, yes, I've made 2 songs, and he just plays it to me. I'm like, dude, it's a hit. I love it. It's so good.
I think it's nice when you see like a student share the same passion that you share.
Yeah,
it's like you kind of like looking, you're like, oh, this is a younger version of me. And probably, Duncan, you see it with having like Luke and the others now teaching for XYZ.
Yeah.
You probably like, it feels like you're just kind of watching over, and it's like, wow, like this is what I've created now. And it's great.
Yeah, Amy was talking to me about the same thing maybe some months ago, but like I can see from like you and Mike in particular, it's like your aspiration has rubbed off on me, I feel. So like I can see how hard, like obviously I was taught by Mike, so I could see how hardworking he is in terms of learning, and like he craves knowledge.
He really does.
And then I just see that, and he's like, oh, you got to listen to this band and this artist. And I'm like, oh yeah, give it to me, feed me with all of this good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then so I think I feel like I follow down that same route. So I think
craving to achieve.
Having a strong teacher that is inspired is thoroughly important, because I remember I had a tutor when I was in school at Longwick, and there was no inspiration there. Yeah. Even though obviously I had the
it's a hard one.
Later down the line I was inspired, but
and with us as a team as well, you've got to put us in the right situation for us to be most effective. So like that particular teacher just might not have been the most, like he or she might not have been that happy about being in that particular teaching environment. You might have caught them at their worst point.
You're right.
And I think that's it. Like I think that's why I'm all about team. I love having a team of people to work with now. Like that's one of the reasons why XYZ and Duncan's Drum School came to existence, because even at Duncan's Drum School I had a couple of people working with me at the time, and because I don't while being a freelance musician is great, and I love working with other musicians, being a freelance teacher is actually a very lonely existence, because you visit schools, you visit your centre, and the only people you talk to is children. And while I love teaching children, I love what they have to offer and what they have to teach me as well, because their transparent honesty is something that will never cease to make me laugh.
It's so great.
And
it's so great.
And while they have that, it is a lonely existence. And like I'm saying, when we go into schools or we're here and one of us is having a particularly bad day, I always know that the rest of the team will kind of pull us up and make us feel good again. And if there's always that buzz of music, kind of camaraderie as musicians, it kind of keeps you excited, even if you're in some grotty little prison cell in a school, because some unfortunately, I'm not saying that as a terrible thing, but like there's a lot of schools out there that do prioritize music, and there's a wonderful setting to teach in. And sometimes you just get some that it's not an ideal room, nor if it's without a window and stuff. All this sort of stuff I'm very aware of, having done it myself in the past, and just trying to sort of like make sure that I appreciate that some of the team members might be going into these situations and making sure that they're happy and they're not, it's a difficult one, but I'm aware of it, and it's something that I want to make sure that some teaching scenarios aren't always the most ideal. That's why when you come here to Westcott, it's just like teaching Mecca, and I like to think that every room is done out as well as it can be, even though we've got 2 rooms that are going to be refurbed in the next 4 weeks. Just making sure that every room is as nice as it can be, and it's a fun space to teach. It's a fun place to practice and record. Actually, one of the things I've kind of fallen into more the last couple of years, this was going to be a subject that I got into as well, because going back to the xylophone and glockenspiel thing you were talking about. More recently, I think since 2017, I started teaching in classrooms, started doing classroom music, and sort of kind of so I can completely understand what you mean about the exposure to limiting instruments in a way, or having limited exposure to them, let alone any at all.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, Luke, you're working with me at the moment, but we're developing something quite exciting here, where we're working on building a primary school music curriculum. So because
I feel like that's what it needs.
Although there is a national curriculum, when I went into Long 4 or nearly 5 years ago now to start there, I was like, okay, trying to pick up off the old music teacher who was close to retirement, and she had a habit of right. So let me give you some perspective. Have you seen that scene from Bruce Almighty where he goes, "Give me Post-its," and it just like the whole room covers in Post-its, right? So she had done the last 2 or 3 years of her lesson plans on Post-it notes. So then when I was trying lesson plans on Post-it notes, so then when I was trying to correlate some sort of like, pathway for each class, timeline for each class, I was like, right, this one has a passive aggressive comment on it, so that's not useful. Like I was just literally opened the folder, just like with all these Post-its. I was like, this is of no use to me whatsoever. Oh, wow. And then like, okay, what resources have you got? Oh, we've got some books down here. It's like, the date's like 1991 or something. I'm like, all right, cool.
Nice.
Like, and so, nothing wrong with old resources, because a lot of
brown pages.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. But like, and not that there's anything wrong with old resources, because a lot of stuff hasn't changed, but kids don't engage with certain things nowadays, especially primary school children. Like, by the time they get to years 4, 5, and 6, like they're a lot older mentally than we give them credit for. Like children are exposed to a lot these days, and getting them excited about music in primary school is a tough challenge if you're using 25-year-old resources. And more. So one of the things that I started to look into, I actually, the first thing I did is I went onto the Gov website and I looked up National Curriculum Music, because I was trying to get more of an overview of everything, because before I'd done group stuff, like whether it was group classroom drumming lessons like djembe and African percussion and stuff, or I had experience in that field, but teaching a whole body of curriculum, there's the possibilities are infinite. But anyway, I went onto the Gov website, and there's only 4 bullet points written to cover the whole curriculum of music for primary school. 4 bullets.
No, that's so bad.
Yeah, and it's so
bad.
It's so vague, and essentially you could cover all those bullet points in the first 3 lessons, which is fine. But as a result, what you're having is and you guys are probably aware of this anyway, and seeing how musicians were kind of treated over the lockdown and the whole COVID pandemic sort of thing. I would. It's safe to say music is becoming less of a priority because of the pressure that's put on academics and schools and things like that. But then, what that's kind of resulted in is music specialists becoming more of a rare breed in schools. So schools are not being able to afford them anymore. And as a result, they're leaving the music education to classroom teachers who, are already jack of all trades with all subjects anyway. But then having to teach music with 4 bullet points, don't forget those 4 bullet points, and then potentially no experience in music at all, because of the lack of priority put into music, teachers probably can get away with just going, nah, we're not going to do any music today. Or if they do, it's going to be a very, I don't know what sort of music lesson that's going to turn into if you've got a non-musician teaching
we
music
just
with no
got to go in and just do what we want.
Play on them.
Right.
Just like mess around.
Right.
It was like, because it was just our classroom teacher and they would just go in for an hour, be like, do whatever you want. And
it was the same for me. It was like, oh, it's music class. Knock yourselves out.
Yeah, just
and
pick up an instrument.
Okay,
marking
just be chaos.
Yeah. But like, man, which is, as long as there's like an aim, I suppose, and get it. Like I do get it. Like at certain levels, you have to allow children to learn through play, but without guidance at all, for musicians, let alone non-musicians, like I just feel like you're doing an injustice to the next generation of musicians, because you want kids to find their buzz for music. Well, everyone's entitled to find it whenever they like in their life, but you just give everyone, especially if they find it earlier on in life, that it's more likely they're going to turn it into something larger in their life, and it's going to sit. It's going to be, once you've learned music, it's not something you just put down. Well, I'd like to think you don't just put it down and never touch it again. It's something that's a life skill. It teaches you about commitment to things as well, and also the idea of never-ending learning. Continuous learning, and it's like with the subject of music. When you start learning it, the horizon of finishing the subject just gets further and further away, because you learn more and more about what you don't know. I think that's what. I read it in a book the other day by Richard Templar. What is it? Being an expert in something is becoming aware of your ignorance. So when you start music, when you're an expert when you understand the full spectrum of what you don't know, and that's kind of
that's cool. I like that.
It's a good saying, because it's you understand, and that's one thing I've always kind of sought comfort from, is that I know where I know hold on, let me just reset my speech. I know where I need to go to get better. I know how to get better, and I seek a lot of comfort from that. The next stage is, cutting out the time to make myself better. But I get a lot of comfort of knowing my direction, and I think I find that's the better way to be, rather than be, an amazing player, all this sort of stuff, but have no idea what you're actually doing, and no idea how to make yourself better, because you have potentially no sort of reference of what you're playing. Especially there's nothing wrong with not learning how to read music, but if you're shredding and doing what you need to do, and you're doing a great job, but then you don't know how to improve yourself, and then you have the whole thing of, actually, I could improve myself with this if I could. The big thing about the world of music now is transcription. We have so much access to so many pieces of music through transcription and YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff as well. But I think the two have to go hand in hand. And it's like being able to speak a language, like learning French, but not knowing how to read French text. It's like being able to speak English, not knowing how to read. It makes things more difficult. And if you can try and educate yourself on how to read music, it's essentially learning a second language. And that's to get so far into your music life and then have to go back, which I did, because the first 6 years of I think I realised I had a rude awakening when I was like 19, when I was at Drum Tech, actually in sight reading class, where I realised I couldn't even read a grade 2 piece, even though I'd achieved my grade 8 through memorising pieces. I had that rude awakening. I have to learn how to read music properly. I'm not doing myself any justice here. So I commit myself to really, learning how to read music properly. And as a result, my ability and my breadth of understanding just exploded as a result. So I think that's something that it's a big, scary obstacle, but worth overcoming.
Notating all of those, all that drum. Notating that Dunk's
Sorry,
drum
my bad speech is wearing off on you. So
I stutter all the time.
Diction,
but yeah, when you notated out that book, that would have been probably some good practice as well, for sure. Like handwriting all of those songs.
Totally.
I found it exactly the same. I mean, like when I started XYZ, I was like, God, I just don't know this stuff. I just don't know how to read. But like you learn through teaching.
You do know, but it's obviously you always knew how to read, Luke. But it's the kind of like being able to process information and turn it around to a student
to relay it,
and show that you have a profound understanding of that stuff. And that's something that comes with time. And it's, you know, what I found is when I got busy with teaching, I sort of found that I was reading more music notation than text. So it just became very natural for me. And a lot of reading music is shape recognition. And if you can do that quite well, then it's fine. And yeah, I think it comes through familiarity, doesn't it? It takes time to become fluent with it, but as long as you understand it, then you're halfway there.
Yeah, this has been great. I mean, we've got so much stuff to talk about, really. Depends how much time you've got, really. But I wanted to also mention The Dying Hour, your recent project.
Not The Dying Hour, right? So This Dying Hour.
No. Sorry.
No. Don't worry. But we were on BBC Introducing about a month ago or 2 months ago now. And they called us The Dying Hour. It's like, great. Any chance of any sort of kudos for this through our social media has gone because you said the wrong damn name. But This Dying Hour. Yeah, go for it.
Well, the floor is yours, man. I mean, obviously, I heard the clip the other day, and this music video that you shot looks so.
Yeah, you posted
sick.
it on Facebook. I think Luke showed me, and it looked super cool.
I'm
really
excited because the last two metal bands I was in, well, one was kind of metal, which was Cyclamen, which I don't know if you remember, but I was in that band with Ollie Steele, Nano Sigo, Hayato Imanishi, and Ed Newman. They were great guys. Really got on with all of them. It just got to a point where I had to. I think it was after we were on a tour with Chimps Banner and Aliases, and which was a great tour. It was great fun and loved all the guys in that tour. But after that tour, I found myself in a position where I needed to commit more time to the drum school and get that stuff going because I knew that, you know, where that needed to be. But and then obviously like people like Ollie Steele went on to be in Monuments, and then he's just been releasing his solo stuff now, which is massive. And then the other band after that was Ever, with some of my best mates, lifelong best mates that I've been friends with for 20 years now. It's actually Sam, the singer, was since we were 3, so 29 years now.
Really?
Yeah. And he's like my amigo in music. So we're recording an album this summer as well, at Stakeout Studios, which will be fun. Anyway, so that was the last time I was in like a band of like an originals band. So that was probably going back, I would say 8 years now. So it was
around a long time.
You know, but it was kind of it coincided with me starting a family and, you know, getting the business up and running and stuff. So it was going to come to a head at some point anyway. So now when Ash approached me, and actually I was in a band with Ash several years ago, because I was getting my metal chops back then, and it was nice to write music with him, another guy called Jules at the time, and it was really good fun. And then once again, commitments kind of got strained, and actually it was hard to get the practice together because we had 5 members to arrange, and not that that's normally that hard, but everyone was at like pivotal points in their life. And anyway, so that kind of dissipated. But then last year, Ash got in touch again, Ash Whitelock, and sort of said, you know, would you like to be in this band? And I remember This Dying Hour from going back 15 years. We used to when I used to gig with my old bands, they were always on the roster as well, and it was a very different lineup back then. And unfortunately, since back in their teenage years as a band, 2 of the members unfortunately died. So so it was a kind of a depleted lineup, and Ash asked me to come and be the drummer, and since then they found a new lead vocalist. So we kind of got together, and actually it was so strange because we recorded that entire EP, and I'd never even met the singer, and then
really?
So I was sent the tracks, kind of learnt my parts as much as I could before getting into the studio, and then we sort of just really experimented on that day and got as much down as we could. And in that day, I recorded 5 tracks, and we used 4 because I think the 5th track was going to get left to the next EP. And it was just a chance for me to. It was really kind of. I mean, it was knackering for one because there's a lot of fast kick pedal stuff in that band, and me being sluggish on my doubles and stuff. I mean, it was a reason to get fit again. And I don't know, were you there on that studio day? But I had basically this like facial muscle massager gun, and like in between takes, I was just drilling myself with this thing to kind of keep my legs alive because by the end of the day I could barely walk. And so we recorded these tracks, and I think. It was just really nice to sort of get creative again, and having been so much more educated and having fleshed out my vocabulary in the last 5 or 6 years. Like I haven't had like a really strict practice routine over the last few years, but I've been quite keen to learn new things all the time. So, paying quite close attention to what's going on in the world of like Dirty Loops, Snarky Puppy, Matt Gartskill with Animals as Leaders. And obviously looking to Ollie and Monuments, listening to a lot of Monument stuff. Like there's so much vocabulary out there, and I'm listening to it a lot all the time, and without realizing, you just pick these things up, whether you're practicing or not. So it was just really nice to kind of find an application for this, all the things that I've been learning, and not that I need to use everything I learned, but it was nice to have this kind of like toolbox that I could use for ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for this EP to come out. I mean, we then ended up. So I recorded the. When did we do it? I can't remember now. It's such a blur. But I recorded the drums for the EP back in October, and I think it was November, or no, it was actually December. It was just before Christmas. We filmed the music video in the little window of time we could before Tier 4 came in.
Yeah.
And I met Gaz, the singer, for the first time that day. So we'd already tracked the entire EP, just virtually.
Yeah,
that's funny.
That's
pretty impressive, though.
It's a sign
that you're able to even do that.
Yeah, sign of the times, really, isn't it? That you can do that, mobile in your own places. I mean, like I think it was Bring Me the Horizon that released their latest album, and that was all from their own houses. They had to do it remotely. So so it's really cool. I'm really looking forward to it. We've started to get some gigs booked in, and we filmed that music video with a guy called Sean, Loki Films, I think it is. He's a brilliant filmographer, and he's done a lot of bands that you would know, including Richard Hawkins for Hacktivist.
Oh, really?
So he filmed their music video on the same park actually. So it was just out one of the derelict buildings at the back of here. We filmed the music video in.
Oh,
it looks like something from Silent Hill.
Westcott Venture Park is just filled with like music video spots, isn't it? It's just epic.
Yeah. It's just because they let some of the buildings go to waste, so it's grim. So they're post Cold War buildings, so they're just not. Some of them just aren't stable to use, so that's why they're left there. But it's also kind of got like a cool relic.
Yeah. Just to look back on, you're like, oh, glad I'm not in those days.
yeah, totally.
But is there anything else that you wanna touch on?
Sure. Covered a lot of stuff, man. It's insane. You're a great talker, which is awesome. Like,
thanks, mate.
I can see my waveform here, and it's like barely. I just go, yep, well, every now and again.
I know. I probably talk too much, get off subject too much, but trim
that's
out
good.
what you need.
You've literally covered all of the things that we've written down here.
I mean, you only touched briefly on fitness. I know you're quite into the gym. Are you looking forward for gyms to reopen?
It doesn't affect me whatsoever. Like, because I've always done things from home. I think
I
get the social aspect. I get the social aspect of going to the gym and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, there's a lot of like dickheads in that scene as well. It's fair to say, and you probably witness it, Amy. Being
I do. They get kicked out. I'm like, no, you gotta go, mate.
Yeah, totally. And I think that people like to go to the gym because that's the right thing to do. And this is one thing. This is one thing that everyone can kind of hopefully relate to, is that you can get. And it's the same with students. Some students that I've got over the years quite good at cultivating a very dedicated student set. You can get students that come to the lesson, they play the drums, they go home, probably don't practice, and on repeat, and they forget to ask themselves why they're playing the instrument. And if they're not into it, then I would never discourage anyone from doing music, and I will always do my utmost to inspire people. But some people just don't want to do music, and that's fine.
The heart's not in it. Yeah,
absolutely. But just young kids can just find themselves, and because they're young kids, they don't, sometimes they're still learning who they are, but they can just go through the motions and not realize that they're not interested in what they're doing. And I feel like if you're going to the gym, by all means go to the gym and do your workout, fine. But if you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, then educate yourself first. Like, some people just go, oh, well, from the stereotypes of magazines and videos I've watched of people in gyms, you just do this with weights. That's what you do, right?
Don't.
So they'll just do that, and then they'll wonder why they turn into cavemen and they've got all sorts of back and shoulder pains.
Like so tight, and it's like they can't move around. You see them like
a weird muscle growing on.
Yeah,
right, and that's just a hernia or a torn bicep. Like, but this is the thing. Like, this is what I find is like, having my eldest brother being a professional footballer, watching him get injured, and I know that my genetics and the way I'm built, I'm probably, I stand at 6'1". I'm heavy set. Like, I used to play rugby, used to be a super heavyweight boxer, and then I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm fat as such, but I'm 18 stone right now. But this from lifting a lot of weights, and it's doing that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
But I know because I'm prone to injury with my back, and I had a knee reconstruction when I was 12, through a torn ACL, cruciate ligament, anterior cruciate ligament. I know that I can get injured. So before I go into something ridiculous and just go and overexert myself, I like to think that I read up on it first and try just to double check things. Like I said, the whole deadlifting came about because I read into a field of research done on lower back pain, and actually how compound lifting helped that to build your core muscles, and with a load of other things, but also looking into posture and just habits just to strengthen that. And now, touch wood, I've been quite lucky with my back since then. But yeah, so the fitness side of things, like I've always made sure I'm able to do what I need to do from home. Or out the back here, I've obviously now kitted out. I've set up a tent and drilled it into the ground and stuff. I say tent, and it's more of like a marquee. And I've just got my collection of weights from over the years out the back there, and I just use that. Like yesterday morning, before I went off and did a full 10-hour teaching day, I was there at 7 o'clock in the morning, did a session, used a little camping shower. It was quite a bizarre experience, really. And then off I went for a full day of teaching. But I think a lot of people like an excuse. So going back to the whole going through the motions things, they like the excuse to go to the gym because that's the right thing to do, whether they're actually getting the gains from it or not, and realizing actually, it's a mixture of gym, but if you wanted to lose weight, for example, it's a mixture of calorie deficit here too. So people fail to see or fail to educate themselves before going.
It's what you fuel your body with. Yeah. That's the thing. Well, make sure you're not going to get gains if you don't have enough protein. I think people forget that. They're just like, I'll just eat all this and that.
I suppose if you wanted to gain weight, it's calorie surplus, but then it's balancing the macros correctly. Because this is another thing. The whole dieting world's a bloody mess. Like, I compare the drumming world to the fitness world a lot, in the way that there's, the way you quantify progress and stuff is quite similar. With the diet world, it's a dangerous game because unfortunately a lot of the diets that are popular involve omitting one of the main food macro groups. So like cut carbs and lose weight. It's like, I think have you heard of James Smith, PT? Obviously his thing is he hates people who say, sell the idea of keto and all that sort of stuff, which I've seen people do keto and get great results, but I just think, sustainability is just balancing everything. And annoyingly, it's like a very boring way to go, and it sounds boring, like everything in moderation, but unfortunately it is. And it's just people want a quick fix, and it's not always a quick fix.
Yeah. Do what makes you happy. So many people force themselves into these diets, and they're just not happy with themselves. I just eat what I want, what makes me feel good, what my body needs, and that's why I'm happy. There's no point having to have this really restrictive diet if you can't
restrict, binge,
feel good.
Binge, restrict. Yeah. I used to do that.
It's so bad. I'm not a big I work in a gym, but that's because I'm good at running a business, not because I'm good at working out. But I know how good it is to move your body, and I make sure that I do move my body. I I won't necessarily go to the gym to work out, but you'll see me shoveling up a whole load of horse poo that will take me hours.
There's so many core or key muscle groups being used when you do that.
That's the thing. Like you're still, as long as you move your body in some way, you don't have to go to the gym. Just make the most of your body.
Lifestyle offers a lot of fitness opportunities there if it's done correctly. So absolutely.
Yeah.
So like I said, just because you go to the gym doesn't mean you're fit.
Exactly.
So just because you go to music lessons doesn't mean you're a musician, or it doesn't mean you're a good musician. You know, you have to.
Yeah.
You do that. It doesn't just because you go to school doesn't mean you're smart. You know, it's all these sort of things. You know, it's what you do when you do that, and making sure that you're at peak performance level, and finding your sort of inspiration to do any of those things. You know, that's the reason why. That's what I really like about later education, is where you can sort of cut out the things you're really not bothered about, and you focus on what interests you. And that's why it's designed that way, I suppose. It's to give us exposure to everything, and then we make our choices. But even then, once we've made our choices, it's finding that excitement to reach those goals.
Exactly.
100%.
But yeah,
I think that's a real good spot to end on.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, I've just talked at you for an hour. So
this is perfect.
That's good.
No, love it. I mean, this is why we're doing this podcast, because like we just chat. If we're recording something, we'll just chat about this kind of stuff, and it's so interesting. And it's like, why can't we share this?
That's the thing, I suppose.
It's so good.
And the frustrating thing for my life setup at the moment, obviously you know, Luke, I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, pretty much 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. I don't get a chance to sit and talk with you guys because I'm just flat out with that, and then I'm running the business at night, or at times when you guys are out off site. So it is nice just to sort of sit and talk about these sort of things, and it's music related, but it's more life philosophy as well, isn't it? So
yeah.
Exactly. It's just hanging out, chatting.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can all hang out with a beer or some spirits and chat.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Soon.
Nice. Okay, well.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in on this episode of the podcast. Make sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok at Luke and Amy. And yeah, subscribe to our channel. Anything else you want to say?
That's good. Episode 6 with Duncan Lee.
Didn't you
Thanks
say
for
episode 7?
listening.
Didn't you say episode 7?
Yeah, I was going to say this is episode 7.
It is
Luke.
episode 7. Oh, cut that out and make it look clean.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Bye.
Hold on, let me just check I've got the audio for this as well.
We'll make sure we'll put your social media in.
Yeah, we'll tag all your socials.
Thanks, guys.
And XYZ socials.
Yeah.
All the socials.
Well, thanks for the chat, guys. Take it easy.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Cool.